Welcome back to the program. So the Democrats obviously lost the shutdown battle. They have nothing, they have no power, they have no good ideas, they have no good policies. They are about as popular as an infected scrotum. Okay? So the only thing that they can even try to hang on to, just trying to hang on like, the last gasp of breath in their bodies, is Epstein. So once again, they thought that they could do something with Epstein. Well, I'm here to tell you it's all garbage, and I'm going to completely debunk the entire thing. Now remember, a couple of months ago, they came out with the birthday card, right? Trying to say that Trump and Epstein were close and everything else. Well, now they're even dumber, and what they have done now is even just ridiculous, okay? And I'm going to break it down right now. So email number one is called My Dear Watson. Now, who's Watson? Well, it's pretty simple. Sherlock Holmes and Watson? Well, apparently, and people may not know this, but apparently Epstein was a big fan of Sherlock Holmes. And in particular, one movie in particular, and I'll get to that here in a second. So email number one is My Dear Epstein. My Dear Epstein, yeah. My Dear Watson, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Then it says, redacted victim. We'll get to that in a second. Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. It'll make sense here in just a bit. Maxwell then responds almost 5 hours later by saying, quote, I have been thinking about that, end quote. The redacted victim, though, however, according to the GOP House Oversight Committee, remember this was released by the Democrat House Oversight folks, according to them, is Virginia Giuffre. You know, the one that didn't commit suicide, didn't get run over, by accident. Yeah, that one, okay? The victim of Jeffrey Epstein, one of the main victims among many others. Why did Democrats then cover up the name of Virginia Giuffre? When the GOP House Oversight Committee immediately were like, sorry, there's no redaction here. We've already dropped that. It's already public knowledge, okay? So this is what they're trying to do. And it's because that victim, Virginia Giuffre, publicly stated over and over and over again that President Trump had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. He never touched her. He never did anything. He never flirted with her. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And now, of course, she's dead. Well, yeah, when you don't try to frame President Trump, there's consequences for that. So then it goes on to say that here it is. It says, in fact, Giuffre's sworn testimony in her lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein exonerates President Trump from any wrongdoing that she was aware of. Then it goes on to say this. Giuffre's testimony stated that President Trump, quote, didn't partake in anything sexual with us, and that Donald Trump never even flirted with me, end quote. It gets even crazier. Listen to this. But besides deceptively, and again, this is deceptive, redacting Giuffre's name, who exonerated President Trump, the email could also then shed some light on Epstein and Maxwell's concerns about a potential confidential informant within their network. In March of 2011, just before the email was sent, the BBC, and other liars, right? They're getting sued for $1 billion from President Trump right now, reported that Prince Andrew, that's right, the Duke of York, came in for a steady stream of criticism over his friendship with the tycoon Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, many had concerns about Epstein, what he was doing, and along with, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell. Then it says this, the dog that hasn't barked, okay? Remember that. The dog that hasn't barked comparison is a common phrase derived from Sherlock Holmes' The Adventures of Silver Blaze, one of the most popular short stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Remember, Epstein was a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes. In that story, a champion racehorse killed its trainer in self-defense. thwarting a plot to sabotage the horse. Sherlock Holmes then deduced that dog and said that that dog didn't bark at the intruder trying to steal the horse because it was someone familiar to the stables that the dog recognized. The saying suggests that the absence of any expected event and that a lack of action is in itself a significant clue. Given that Epstein goes on to mention that Trump, quote, has never been mentioned by the police chief or anyone else for that matter, and that Epstein is, quote, 75% there, it suggests that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell both believed that President Trump may have been an FBI informant. That dog that didn't bark, and therefore not mentioned by law enforcement out of confidentiality. This speculation is supported by the attorney who represented Virginia Giuffre in 2008, her personal attorney, okay, Bradley Edwards, who gave an interview that acknowledged that President Trump was, quote, the only person who volunteered to talk with him regarding Jeffrey Epstein. In the interview, Edwards said, the only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who in 2009, when I first served a lot of subpoenas and a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I wanted to talk to them, he was the only person who picked up the phone and said, hey, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you need, and I'll tell you everything you need to know, end quote. And President Trump was very helpful in the investigation with the information that he gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything. And then it says, but he had great information that checked out, that we could verify, and that helped us build our case against Epstein. Okay? Now, let's listen. Well, we don't need to listen because I kind of read it, but then there's this, episode 2 and episode 3. Email, I meant, 2 and 3. So email 2 was released by, again, the Oversight Committee, Democrats only, and was dated January 31st, 2019. Jeffrey Epstein wrote to author Michael Wolff. Now, let's stop right there. Who is Michael Wolff? Michael Wolff is a far-left, anti-Trump, hating scumbag author. That's what he is. That's who he is. You may remember from the first Trump administration, he wrote some scathing books about President Trump and said all these horrific things. Well, we're going to get a little bit further into the weeds on this. So it says redacted victim, Mar-a-Lago, obviously Giuffre, right? Then it says, Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. In other words, this is Jeffrey Epstein now saying that Trump asked him to resign as a member of Mar-a-Lago. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. These are emails that were with this guy, Wolff, Michael Wolff, who was writing books attacking President Trump. Prior to January 2019, the references to this claim were sparse. Most of those claims that Trump, quote, kicked him out or banned him, not that he asked him to resign from the club. Mar-a-Lago is a private club. Not all patrons are members. There is a distinct difference between being banned and being asked to resign. Email number 3. In the most interesting of these emails, in a series of correspondence between Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Wolff, who again is an anti-Trumper writing anti-Trump books, on December 15, 2015, the day of the GOP presidential debate, Michael Wolff tips off Jeffrey Epstein that President Trump at the time, Donald Trump, may be asked about his relationship with you, Jeffrey. Okay, this is what he's saying to him. Either on the air, on the stage, or afterwards in the post-debate wrap-up. Epstein then responds, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Wolff then responds an entire day later. I think you should just let him hang himself. This is Michael Wolff, the anti-Trump author who wrote books lying about the president. I think you should just let him hang himself. Trump hang himself. If he says that he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, well, then that gives us valuable PR and political currency. You see the manipulation behind the scenes here? You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, Jeffrey. Or if it really looks like he could actually win this thing, this is what it says, you could then save him, generating a debt and or holding something over his head. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say that Jeffrey is a great guy. He'll say that you're a great guy, basically, and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. So in other words, he's basically saying that Trump's going to be a dictator on day one. Even back then, they were making this bullshit up, okay? Then Michael Wolff had conducted hours upon hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein regarding President Trump and other powerful figures. However, this exchange is quite concerning because Michael Wolff suggests potentially using President Trump's denials of being on the plane or in the Epstein estate as, quote, political currency to, quote, try to hang him with a false attack. So what this essentially is it's the wrap-up smear, right? That's what Nancy Pelosi famously created, the wrap-up smear, where you make up a lie, and then you take the lie and you shop it to the prostitutes in the media, and then you give the talking points to the prostitutes in the media. The prostitutes in the media stand in front of the camera and they flap their gums and they tell the lie as long as you possibly can, over and over and over. They send it to the other networks. The other networks jump on it. All the alphabets are saying the same thing. And all of a sudden, as Joseph Goebbels said, if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. Then the next thing you know, you capitalize on the lie. And you fundraise off of the lie. And you do whatever you can to paint that person as a liar and the fact that he's guilty of something, of anything. This is something that Nancy Pelosi created and has admitted. There is video of it. Okay? Not making any of that up. Then it says, he suggests that Trump, if he wins, we could, quote, save him and use this as political collateral later. So in other words, the witch hunts never stopped. They started from the escalator and they continued on. And this was just another one. And now the Democrats, feeling that they have nothing, and they truly have nothing, they're just grasping at straws. They're throwing anything out there. Here, let's throw a giant pile of crap at the wall and see if it sticks. That's what's happening here. So I wanted to cover this. I wasn't even going to cover it because it's so stupid. But I figured, you know what? I can't let the left-wing narrative take place and get baked in and nobody know the truth. So I'm going to leave this one out, not under the paywall, so that it can be shared anywhere and everywhere because it's important. We've got to stop these false narratives. President Trump has done absolutely nothing. He is the only one, including Virginia Giuffre's own attorney, saying he was the only one that actually tried to help. There is no conspiracy here. There is no cover-up here, okay? None whatsoever. Now, I have said they should release more information, but as I've also said, I think if they released all the names, guess what? You would lose 75% of Democrats in Washington and probably 25% of Republicans in Washington. That's no joke because they're all baked in, the majority being 3/4 of Democrats and very few Republicans. So I don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, at this point, I don't care. Obviously, I want restitution for the victims. And I don't know why the victims aren't coming forward. Well, yeah, I think I know why. Because they're afraid of this. They're afraid of being killed. They've probably been threatened. Their family's been threatened. Their friends, their relatives, their mother, their father, their sister, their brother. These people want to keep this under wraps. And so I think there's twofold reasons why it's not coming out. The victims are deathly afraid, number one. And number two, it would literally wipe out Washington, D.C. Literally overnight. If every name came out, it would shock you at the amount of people in the Democratic Party that are on those lists. Shock you, okay? So I don't know what to say other than that. All I can say is this is yet another false narrative that they're trying to get people to believe. It's a wrap-up smear, and quite frankly, it's not a very good one. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.